Well, hello, and welcome back to a bonus episode of the Circus of Safety. A little bit weird this time, though. A little bit weird. Normally, we have a special guest that isn't one of the three of us, but this time our special guest is actually one of the three of us. Are you confused, or is it just me?
I'm confused that you went to me because that sort of implies that I'm the special guest, but in fact, Andy's the special guest today.
Yes, it is. It is. Mate, Andy, how are you, fella?
I'm doing all right. Not only am I the special guest, I'm the international special guest. Currently streaming live from the northeast of England.
Wow. Listen, hey Des, do you find Andy's one of those guys that always has to one up you? You know what I mean? Like, not only is he a special guest, but he's a special guest coming in from London. I mean, really?
No,
I
not
know.
from London. Not from London.
I
Not
was
from London.
I was going to brag about the fact that I'm in Picton, but that's meaningless now.
Jeepers. And here I am from little old Tamaki Makaurau in Auckland, the birthplace of the Circus of Safety. So I'm keeping it real, people. I'm keeping it real. Not so sure about you, but that's okay. Hey, so as you've heard, Andy is over in the UK. We're still unsure as to how long for, but he's telling us he will be back. Because this time frame doesn't work for me, mate. This early up kind of doing stuff. I'm going to be needing a nana nap at some time this afternoon. So last week's show, I guess we're just going to get straight into it, right? Last week's show we had a special co-host. That co-host was Vanessa Crafts, and much to I don't know, my excitement, possibly not the other two people, it landed on is self-preservation a risk control. I mean, I know the look of horror and shock on your face when that landed on the wheel. I mean, have you had a chance to digest the topic and what it was and what it meant and where you're going with it?
No, I absolutely struggled with that topic. I had some thoughts on it. This idea of different people, well, the humans perceiving risk differently, and I use the example of shark attacks and driving to the beach. And if you applied stats to that, you'd get a different outcome to what most people's emotive response to that would be. But I don't even know if that answers or touches on the topic. So I was really clutching at straws with that one.
Although you did seem to have a few more words than normal, so I don't know whether it was just our co-host, our special co-host, bringing out the best in you, because I don't seem to be able to do that at all. I mean, Andy, I know you and I have spoken via text over this topic, and first I just got to apologise. I sound a bit Barry Whitish. I seem to be suffering from, I don't know, either laryngitis or a cold, one of the two, but we'll push on. You and I have spoken about it, and you were quite excited by the topic. So obviously, you weren't able to, but you were tuning into the show. Your initial thoughts while listening to the show, preparing to travel to the UK. What did you take away from it?
It's an enormous topic, and the more that I thought about it, the bigger the topic it got. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's a real fundamental principle of safety. I think it's really at the core of what safety is, what safety isn't. And
Wow.
The different directions that you can take it highlight the different elements that make up safety. It's really quite. I've thought a lot about it. Well, because I had a lot of time on an airplane.
I was going to say, you've clearly listened to the show a few times. Is that why our listenership is up so much? You had the
It's all
show
me.
on repeat.
It's all me.
Wow.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just talking before we turned on the record button, and I guess we were wondering whether maybe the question wasn't worded well. Maybe I didn't sell the topic well. It was a topic that I threw up on the on the wheel, because some of the conversations, and Andy, we spoke about this over text, possibly went in a direction maybe I wasn't expecting, maybe the team weren't expecting, and is that potentially what caused Des to be clutching at straws, do you think?
Quite possibly. When Des is on the fly, he really is on the fly. Yeah.
Well, he's on the
It
floor
was,
right
it, was,
now.
it was a joy to behold.
Well, watching him squirm.
It was brilliant. I think what was quite interesting about it is you didn't give a whole heap of context,
Yeah.
because what I've found is the stuff that you put up on the wheel tends to be triggered by something that's irritated you.
Very much so.
But
Very much so.
the problem is, by the time it comes up on the wheel, you've generally forgotten what it was that actually triggered it.
No, you're right. And I guess as well, so this is really awkward because I've just spent 2 days in Wellington with the executive team of and the board of InchPo talking about, say,
Oh, wow.
the capability framework. And there's a very clear definition between practitioner and professional, but I'd like to consider myself a professional, right? But at the end of the day, I'm also a practical. I don't know. Can you get a practical professional? I'm in the thick of it. I'm at the coalface. Like this, and we know you don't actually do anything, Andy, but sell snake oil. But um, a lot of my topics are triggered in anger. I guess would be the term. And where I was going with this, and I'm glad you're here because Des didn't manage to get this out of me. So really, I was carrying the whole show. Thankfully, we had somebody that was responding to me in the terms of Vanessa Crafts. Because if I didn't have her helping me out, I don't know where the show would have gone. But um, I guess where I'm getting tired of is we go to all these conferences, we go to these meetings, we go to all this stuff, and we're constantly getting, in the event of emergency, do X, Y, Z. I mean, I do question. We talk about safety clutter a lot, and I question the validity of it. At the end of the day, we've got a whole bunch of illuminated signs. If a building is burning down, no one is going to remember the talk that they had 6 hours prior. So, is self-preservation a risk control? So, in the event of an emergency in a building, is my natural instinct to get myself out of danger going to take effect? And will I get myself out of a building, as an example? Is probably where I was sort of going. Des, I probably didn't articulate that very well last week. I mean, does that help you kind of maybe understand a bit more about where I was trying to go with the topic?
Maybe. I mean, some thoughts are coming to me, and I would like to think that if I was in an emergency situation like that, I would remember my training. I would be checking toilets in the rooms for other occupants. I would be looking at active fire controls if I can use them. I would like to think that I would remember to do those things and not just get myself the hell out of the building.
Wow! So you've touched a nerve now, mate. We're going in full ball. Sorry, Andy, you're about to witness something that's not going to be pretty. Training. Now we had this topic pop up on the wheel a while back. Would you consider a 2-minute briefing at the start of an 8-hour day training?
No, but it's better than it's information that I might be able to use and retain.
Andy, I've got to cross to you. I've got to calm down. What are your thoughts, mate? Where's Des going? Are you on the same page as him?
Not really, but sort of.
Get off the fence, mate. Get off the fence.
No, because this is why the topic is so fascinating. So what Des is saying there is effectively he was talking about the role of a fire warden, effectively. Yeah, he's going to go and check the bathrooms and all that sort of stuff. That's absolutely the opposite of self-preservation. Like, self-preservation is get the hell out of there. What he's suggesting is preserve other people, which clearly isn't. Which clearly isn't what we're talking about here.
Well,
like, it's
so
the
hang
opposite.
on. Now this is going down a rabbit hole. So are you saying I'm selfish and Des is more compassionate? Is that what we're going? Is that where we're going?
No. I'm trying to break down the circumstances. Is that if in my mind self-preservation is looking after yourself, right? Yeah. And it clearly is a risk control. It clearly is. You cannot dispute the fact that our behaviours, our responses allow us to survive. It's there. Almost to the point that training is about counteracting that.
Ooh.
So a lot of safety training briefings are to counter your initial reaction, which is to, I don't want to get in the whole psychology of it, but maybe we should. It's the fight or flight response in the amygdala. So you get some stimulus and you respond to it before your brain engages, thinking fast, thinking slow, Daniel Kahneman. It's all this sort of stuff. And training is generally to stop that. It's to counteract that. So if you think of the military, if people start firing bullets at you, your response is to get the hell out of there. But that's the last thing you want your army to do. That's why they train to combat that initial response. So you could make a case that a much safety training is potentially about undoing that response.
Okay. Deez, before I take it off on another tangent, any thoughts on Andy's comments there?
Yes, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that it's self-preservation is a control, but it may not necessarily be the best control in every circumstance.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's where the sort of training and instruction comes into play to counteract.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Because self-preservation is very selfish. It's about the individual. When we want to rescue everybody on the aircraft, not just me. There's some brilliant experiments being done about aircraft evacuations. I don't know if you've seen them, but to get a license, a certification, you've got to be able to evacuate the aircraft within 3 minutes. It's something like that. And that's how they do it. But they do it in perfect conditions. So they did some experiments where they started to give cash prizes for the first people out. So if you were one of the first 10 people out, you got $1,000. Now suddenly it took 12 minutes to empty the aircraft.
Because everyone was fighting to get the money.
Everyone was fighting to get out. And that's probably a more accurate reflection of what would happen in an accident. Like, we all like to think we'd be the hero that rescued the baby and the crippled granny. But the reality is sod that, let's just get out of there.
I'm flying back to Auckland today. Was that Air New Zealand? Might need to change my seat number.
Always sit by the exit. But it's a fascinating field, because when the topic came up, I was initially thinking this is easy, this is human factors, but actually I think it's a bit more complex than that.
Yeah, but you raise a valid point, and again, it was interesting though. I'm just kind of reflecting back on my career. Right, I've had a pretty, some may argue, checkered past where I've done a lot of things in my time. Thankfully, none of them have resulted in me ending up behind bars at this point. But good things take time, apparently. I'll never forget, actually. Some people may or may not realise this. I was a bit bored with my life at one point, and I actually signed up and joined the New Zealand Fire Service. And I became somebody paid me to ride around in a big red truck and save lives. Obviously, they didn't do psychometric testing on me because somehow I got through. But where I'm going with this is I'll never forget the day we went racing off to an alarm, right? An alarm activation in a shopping mall. And it was phenomenal. I'll never forget it. Like, there I am. It was back when I was young. I must have been about 22 or something, right? So young and excitable, and we're in this big red truck and we're flying through. It was Papakura, to be exact. Greenwatch, big shout out to you, Greenwatch Papakura. Anyway, we pulled up to the Papakura, one of the Papakura shopping centres. Three burly men, two burly men and a skinny little boy, jump out of the truck safely, of course. Don all of our gear, and I'm talking like full gear, right? And we start heading into this building, and I'll never forget the day we walked into this building, alarms blaring, nobody knew why, and there was people in the gym on the rowing machines, just happily kind of still doing their row, even while firefighters were suddenly scrambling, walking through the building. And it blew my mind that clearly in that case, self-preservation was not a high priority for those individuals. Clearly their cardio workout was, and they prioritised the cardio workout over self-preservation. But again, and that's where I almost also started getting, I guess, interested in I guess, and like you said, Andy, the human factors aspect of it, right? Human behaviour. You got alarms blaring. You would think that most people would appreciate or acknowledge that would suggest that there's something wrong. You think people would get out of the building, right? But these people actually sat there and were more focused on their cardio workout than getting out of the building. So now, had the building burnt down, and those individuals had died. Fascinating conversation. Would one of the contributing factors have been the fact that there was no self-preservation? These people chose to not worry about their self-preservation. They chose to worry about their cardio workout.
Potentially. I mean, this is really interesting because this is where we start to move into causation and accident investigations, because the behaviours are dependent upon the environment that you put these people in. So those people might be at the gym every day. That fire alarm might go off every day and nothing's ever happened. So they've become normalised. They've become desensitised to it. This happened at a school that I taught at. Kids were setting the fire alarms off so often, and the deputy principal used to go and switch it off. And then one day the woodwork room caught fire, and the alarms were all going on, and he went and turned them off.
Wow. Wow. Des, normally you're lost for words, but I just saw your gasp. I mean, your thoughts on where we're going with this?
Look, your story is no surprise to me. I witnessed something very similar in Thornley Shopping Centre in Perth. And if you know anything about Perth, you know Thornley is a very upmarket area, and the supermarket had a big glass side to it. And I could see shoppers. There was a fire in the supermarket, alarms going, people evacuating. And as I was moving out of the building, I could see people pushing their trolley down the aisle, pushing the smoke out of the way so they could see what was on the aisle to continue shopping.
So there was an actual fire going on, like
Yeah,
legitimate
and smoke,
fire,
like black
everywhere.
smoke. And they were like ducking under the smoke to see the product on the shelf so they could get it.
Wow. And so again, this is kind of where I guess I'm going, right? So in that instance, clearly something hadn't kicked in, right? Now, and I'm arguing, is that self-preservation that hasn't kicked in? I mean, the fact that they felt that, I don't know, a bottle of jam was more important than their life would suggest that maybe that's a failed control. Is kind of where I'm going with it, I guess.
Yeah, it's again, this is another aspect of safety which is problematic, in that it's the short-term and long-term piece. So if we talk about self-preservation as risk controls, then people smoke cigarettes. Like, it's
But I don't,
beyond belief.
because I'm concerned with my personal well-being and my life.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of people do, like historically, and it's for vaping now, but a lot of people do stuff that's negative in the long term, but they focus on the short term. And as humans, we're very good at short term, but we're very poor at strategic stuff.
And that I guess is represented in the stats too. And when people talk about
absolutely.
The number of deaths in New Zealand due to workplace incidences versus the number of deaths from work-related health issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm going to take this down a slightly different topic. And Des, I think I touched on this last week. So I'm interested to see if you, now that I think I've seen a light bulb pop on. I don't know whether it's just your background light or something, but something's definitely turned on, and I can see it in your eyes, mate. I can see it in your eyes. So we do all this training. So I used working at height, I think, last week to try to explain where I was going with this, right? So we put all the fall restraint systems in the world. We put all the training in the world in place for roof access. At the end of the day, though, we still rely on somebody to actually use that training. We still rely on somebody to use that equipment to avoid them falling off the building and dying. I'm putting it on the table that that's self-preservation, right? The need or the want to use that stuff to keep themselves safe. Any thoughts on that now that you're kind of coming around to the topic?
I feel like that touches on something that we covered with the show with Derek Toner, that idea that the controls become so much a part of how you do things that you feel naked without them. Like getting in a car without a seatbelt. It's just such a force of habit and such a routine thing that you do it without thinking, and you don't really imagine driving the car without your seatbelt on. Well, for most of us, anyway. Are we going down that path? Is that something?
Well, that's a great example and a phenomenal wonder, right? So we get into this habit of doing something, right? Which is the seatbelt idea. We get into this habit, like you said, I feel naked without my seatbelt on, so I put it back on, right? Is it because is that self preservation going? Oh my God, something's not right. I need to put this on to look after myself. Is that why we feel naked? Is that why we need to put that seatbelt back on?
I don't think that's not the reason. That's not what I'm conscious of when I'm clicking in my seatbelt. I'm clicking in my seatbelt because it's habit, and I would feel weird if I didn't have my seatbelt on and I was driving down the road. I'm not
Okay.
thinking about the fact that it is an obvious fact that if I have a crash, I'm going to go through the windscreen, and you know, but I'm not conscious of that while I'm clicking in my seatbelt. That's not the
Interesting.
primary motivation for that, I would say.
No, fair enough. Andy, your thoughts?
That's an interesting one because it's that habit forming. So is that self-preservation or is just that following a habit? I think that's just a habit, isn't it?
And going back to
I don't
Brenton's
know.
point, if we're relying on people to implement controls, maybe we need to get to the controls to the point where they become habit, because self-preservation isn't enough on its own.
Well, no, that's I guess that we start going down a different road there. Whether the control is sufficient, I mean that's a whole nother conversation, right? But I guess my question is it a control? And potentially it is. We are relying on people to go, actually, if I don't do this, the consequences could be so severe that I'm going to die. I actually don't want to die. I need to do this until that habit is formed, that's how they continually do it.
I think there's two separate things that we're looking at here, though, in terms of this self-preservation. So me, I was very much focused on the fight or flight response, which isn't really conscious thought. You don't think this could hurt me. It's shit. Boom, you react. And I think that is absolutely risk control. And it's been fundamental to our evolution. We're only here now because our ancestors had that. If they didn't, they'd have been eaten by dinosaurs. My history might be a bit sketchy there. But you know, but where I got with this though is for various reasons was if we apply it to the psychosocial world. So I think this is where it starts to go a bit wrong, because if you're working in a workplace that causes you enormous amounts of stress and anxiety, self-preservation is to stop working there. But no one suggests that. What everyone suggests is the workplace adopt practices to suit your needs. So therefore, that's almost the opposite of self-preservation. People keep working at really bad environments. It's almost like self-abuse.
Yeah, there's a
I
term
think
for that, isn't there?
that's quite an interesting.
Yeah, and they talk often about people that are in situations of physical abuse as well, right? And not being able to get themselves out of that situation. So is that almost the opposite end of the spectrum to what Des was talking about in terms of I put my seatbelt on because it's a habit. I feel weird without it on. You've taken self preservation and turned it into a habit, or you go the other way where self preservation is taken away from you because it's been I don't know taken out of you somehow, right? So quite a
Yeah, and that becomes a normalized behavior.
yeah. So normal. So I guess that's where the self preservation, albeit not necessarily a great risk control, is it's a fine line, right? It's a very fine line between it working and not working.
Yeah, I think in certain circumstances it's absolutely vital. Like after an accident and you're the only one involved, self-preservation works a dream.
So
As soon as you find yourself in in a more complex or a slower or a more chronic situation as opposed to so I think what you're talking about works really well in an acute situation, like a one-off, an accident incident.
so Andy,
But in terms of illness or a chronic condition, it wouldn't work so well. In fact, it doesn't work so well. In fact, it's actually becomes a hazard.
wow, oh my God, we've gone full circle. Um, Maybe that's a whole other topic for the wheel. Can controls become hazards? And I think we're all on the same page with this. I'm just going to make a note of that, boys. Can controls become hazards? Now, Andy, I try to I try to touch on an example last week. Now, you may be familiar with this one where tragically 7 lives were lost in a canyon a number of years back in an outdoor education trip. Now, and again, I wasn't there, and full disclosure, I wasn't there at the time. I haven't spoken to individuals personally about this. There was a really good documentary that was done about the incident, and one of the things that really has really stuck with me, and this is again where I guess the self preservation piece is so important for me, is there's a poignant moment in the documentary where they'd gone up this canyon and realized, I guess, that something wasn't right. They realized that there was a problem. When looking at options to get themselves out of the situation, one of the options was to go back down the way they came. Yep, which is one option. The other option was to go a different way. Um, Now, the decision to go back the way they came had nothing to do whether that was the best option or whether that had the better chance of survival, scientifically or not scientifically. It was
Mhm.
based on the fact that the individual in the situation wasn't trained to go out the other way. Now, in my mind, self preservation could have, should have, maybe had it kicked in. Would that decision have been different? And would they have gone the other way? Now, would that have resulted in the lives not being lost? We don't know. We never will know. But it was interesting that the decision to go the way they went had nothing to do with potentially the best outcome or self preservation. It was based on rules and processes. So, any thoughts on that in relation to this topic?
Yes, lots of thoughts. So when you talk about self-preservation in that context, you were talking about the leader making the decision, I guess. In my mind, he wasn't thinking about self-preservation. He was thinking about the preservation of the other people, and I believe that there's indications that he went above and beyond to try and keep the kids alive.
I'm not disputing that at all.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the opposite of self-preservation, right? So it becomes complex in that sort of situation. The way that my understanding is the way they went, the reason they went back the way that they were familiar with is well known to almost everybody in emergency responses. Is that familiarity is what people will do. They've done loads of research for this with the fire service as well. Is that people will go back out the way that they came in, even though the emergency exit door is on the left and goes straight outside. They will take the 15-kilometer route through 6 flights of stairs because that's the way they came in. And there's some sort of security in the familiarity. So that I mean, it's just like it's just almost so many different. It's such. I think this is the best thing that you've put on the wheel.
Well, thank you.
Clearly, everything that I and Des have put on is better, but for you, it's a really good one.
Well, it's all about perspective. It's all about perspective, right? And I said, I like to think I do. I keep my benchmarks low, mate, because then moments like this, I then rise above, right? So set the
Yeah,
standards low, right, rise above high. Um, Des, I
it is
mean, your
interesting.
thoughts on that topic now that you on that example that I gave. Now that you seem to have I guess we seem to be on the same page around what we're talking about.
I think I just want to touch on what Andy just said, the quality of this topic. I think it is a very good quality topic, and it serves as an example of what can come when you piss off Brent.
So please don't piss him off ever again.
But a thought that came to my mind was, what if your flight or flight response misfires?
What? Sorry, say that again. Sorry, I missed that. What? Sorry.
What if your flight or flight response misfires?
Yep.
And then, speaking personally, I've had panic attacks in the past, which has been described to me as a misfiring or I don't know if misfiring is the right word, but it's your flight or fight response responding to a situation where it's not required. So could that factor into this and make it not a control and make it a hazard?
Yeah, correct. And I think, and that's where Andy was going, right? Is that
No, not quite. No, not quite. No, I don't think at all. I think what Des has said, I would disagree with. I don't think in that context it becomes a hazard.
well, I think it's time to wrap this show up. It's been really good coming to you.
No, I think what I was meaning was that it becomes a hazard because being under a stressful situation for a long period of time, which is what we're talking about, is the cause of stress and anxiety. So therefore, that is the hazard. But I was only thinking of it in the chronic terms. I don't think you making a bad decision in the moment would necessarily lead to that. It's not going to hurt you making
I
the
don't
bad
know if he
decision.
was saying he made a bad decision, Andy. Now we're putting words in the man's mouth, right? Like,
Well, it is. I mean, he was talking about his amygdala misfunctioning, right? So his fight or flight's got right. He should have ran and he froze.
so
Yeah,
then,
so it's a bad decision.
therefore, would that be a failed control? If we have that instinctively, and
It
we're
was
saying
saying
that,
it's a control. Yeah, I would say it's a failed control.
so it did the wrong thing at the wrong time, and that's like anybody, right? If we use the wrong piece of equipment at the wrong time, it's a failed control, right? If we choose not to
Yeah,
put some
yeah.
PPE on, or not to use the training, or not to follow the process or whatever, failed control. So I guess that's my question is. So it sounds like if it's something that we do, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we do rely on it to do something, right? So
Absolutely,
therefore, is
absolutely.
it not a control? And it sounds like maybe we're all agreeing to some extent it is. So therefore, should we acknowledge it in our hazard and risk registers, because it is something that can fail, and we need to be mindful of that.
I think it should be. It will be acknowledged in most risk registers. I think.
Self-preservation. I don't think I've
Well,
ever
no,
seen.
not in those words. But decision making, like even if it's not exact, but we talked earlier on about induction, right? Emergency response. That's self-preservation stuff, isn't it?
Well,
Like the
responding.
induction, the induction doesn't. The induction's not a control, even though it'll say a control, right? It's the induction provides you with information to allow you to make a better decision,
Or
which is
implement
broadly
controls.
speaking what we're talking about here. Yeah.
I'm a little confused now because a flight or fight response is not a conscious decision. You're not choosing to freeze.
But does that not make it a control? That just because it's not a
It
conscious
might be a
decision.
control, but Andy keeps referring to a decision that we're making and a decision that we're informing in order to do something else. But I don't think that the fight or flight response is not a conscious decision that's being made.
No, it's not, it's a decision though. Your fast brain is making a decision to either run or fight. Like that, it's a decision.
It's like I'm deciding.
As well.
It's like I'm deciding for my heart to beat. That's not a decision. My heart's beating.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is triggered the same way, isn't it?
Well, I think we're moving into a topic that's well above our pay grades, and we might need to find us.
No, because that's consistent though. I think that's a different system, Des. I see where you're going with it, but the decision is you either fight or flight, right? You've got two choices there. And they're both very real, or freeze, I suppose there's three. They're both very real. So that is, in my mind, that I would classify that as a decision. It's not necessarily a conscious decision, it's a subconscious decision, but it's still a decision.
So there's two levels there, because like going back to the idea of having a panic attack, I'm not deciding to activate my flight or fight mode. And I'm not deciding.
No, you're not.
Which of those I'm gonna go for.
No, absolutely. It's subconscious. And that leads you to it. Now, as time goes on, so if you have a panic attack, it could be triggered by your fast breathing. But if you learn to breathing strategies and things, as time goes on, your slow brain kicks in, and you start to calm down. So
Fantastic.
that's the context of it. But it's a really interesting topic.
It is, and I don't think we've got time to go down that road today, but maybe we can chuck that one on the wheel. But as we wrap up this bonus episode with none other than one of the tri-hosts, Andy Evans, Des, are you racing back to the office, flying back up from Picton to chuck in self-control as a risk control in your registers?
Self-control?
No, I don't think I understand it well.
Sorry, self-preservation. I'm losing track here.
I don't. I'll say no, and the reason I say no is because if I picked that up in someone else's risk register that I was trying to assess, I'd be asking a lot of questions, and that I don't know if I'd be able to answer them.
Fair enough. Great thought out decision there, Des. Andy, are you going to be suggesting to clients to put self-preservation as a risk control in their registers going forward?
Probably not.
Okay,
Probably
awkward.
not. Well, not in that context. Not in that context, but it's relevant. But it would come. It's human factors, which I would encourage all my clients to consider.
Is that a risk control or is that a factor to consider? That's an interesting conversation for another day. So I guess I'm going to have to reevaluate whether I'm going to be putting self-preservation in my registers because apparently no one else is. Andy, mate, as you wrap up your stay in the UK, any indication as to when you'll be back here in good old-fashioned Aotearoa?
Probably another 3 weeks, maybe.
Well, mate, listen, safe times over there in the UK. Des, you got much happening in the next week or so?
Not so much, but we have some upcoming interviews with Sign On Site, which I don't know if it's too early or premature to announce those, but Sign On Site have certainly announced them.
They sure have. That's quite exciting, right? But I'm a little bit concerned, actually, Des. I'm a little bit concerned, to be fair.
Why do you
Are
say
they
that?
trying to divide and conquer? They have split us up. They will not have us together as a threesome. It'll be individual webinars. I mean, thoughts? Are you worried about this? Are they trying to break up the band?
I lost you for a minute there. Sorry,
we've
mate.
lost Des.
It's bad internet connection.
Yeah, okay, we'll wrap this up. We'll do more about this on our live show next week when Des is back in Auckland. Andy, so I guess we'll keep in touch, mate, about whether joining in for the live show is going to be something that you can do next week.
Hopefully, I'm optimistic.
You're optimistic. Well, that's great because I don't know how much longer we can cope with a special co-host, but we miss you, mate. We miss you, and I'm glad to see that you could join us today. And hopefully you guys all have a great weekend wherever you may be, and no doubt we will keep in touch and we'll all talk soon.
Awesome. Speak soon.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Yeah.